let me summarize the setting. You can tell me yes, I understand it, or no, and then I think I can go from there. Because you're a highly motivated person, you might have looked at people who set goals as, I don't need to do that because I'm getting up and I'm doing stuff every day anyway. Now you've moved into a place based on experience and life experience where you're saying, well, I need to be more organized about this. I work hard and I put effort toward everything, but I need to be very deliberate and fierce about what I'm doing so that I can have a more calculated outcome to my efforts. Would that be right? Yeah, so you had lots of goals, so you didn't really set them because you had many and you knew in general what direction they were and where you were going and you were pursuing what those things were. I did write Perpetual Motivation a little bit about this sort of thing, that when we're trying to set these goals, we have to know where we're gonna set them and that there are 6 balance points in life: faith, family, finances, physical health, social contributions, and continued education. Because if we set them in all those categories, we don't have to worry about setting them anyplace else. So that's just one area. But what's really cool about these is that there's a generalization effect where you don't have to sit there and like make big elaborate lists in each one of these things at all. Because when you do them in certain areas of your life, you're just gonna pull all of them up. You already know this stuff. I know you know this stuff. But let me get into a couple of them deliberately just when it comes to like your actual work goals, because that's what we're talking about mostly. Because you've got all the other ones are just totally in play right now. But you're talking about like building the business, right? So you can make the leap from where you are to that full time and crush it. This question you're asking me is probably the most common question. When I built Leading Giants and I was talking to the marketing team, and they said, what's the audience? I said, it's between 25 and 45 year old men, okay? And they are now doing the math and recognizing they have a certain level of dissatisfaction with where they are and they need to make a change. And I said, now, if you're really going to define this, you have to define it like deliberately. You can't brand a product or build an audience with a range. You'll have your range, but then you pick one person and you sell your idea to that one person as kind of like the iconic figure of what you're doing, right? So we were sitting in a meeting and I said, the guy's name is Matt. He's 32 years old. He has 3 kids. He had thought he would be further ahead financially than he is right now. He's seeing the coming education costs. He's seeing all sorts of plans and dreams that he wants, including retirement. Life is way more expensive than he thought it was ever going to be. And so he knows he needs to do something more. And it is likely going to be start his own business so that he can build equity in it and go from there. But he's trapped and he doesn't know exactly how to get out of the trap. So he needs to understand, how do I do both at the same time in order to make the leap? So that's literally the audience that we're talking to, okay? I actually did this myself. So even though I was in the Cutco business and for the longest time I was an entrepreneur within that, they made me a region manager where I became an employee. And so now I was kind of trapped in the same circumstance that you are in right now. And so I started building companies on the side, wondering when it was that I was going to be able to take the leap and make the leap in order to do it all the way. You're an independent contractor, so you can work when you want, where you want, whenever you want, right? So here's a couple of questions that I have. How long does it take to get enough leads that equal one appointment? Okay, so you have leads in front of you. Okay, so let's just use those leads. They gave you 800 leads within 15 miles. How many phone calls do you need to make out of those 800? Because here's a lot of questions I don't know about those leads. Are they actual decision makers, or are they gatekeepers? Are they really qualified people? Are these the SMBs that actually have the budgets for what you have? Are they experiencing the I don't know anything about these leads. And if they gave you 800 that fast, they're probably not that clean. Okay, all right, so here's a couple of different things. When you make phone calls from the 800 versus, and you don't have to answer these in great detail right now. We'll just use abouts. You're going to be able to do the work that I'm suggesting to you right now, and it's going to open up a whole new door to this. So if you were to just give me a knee-jerk guess, and then what I want you to do is I actually want you to pay attention to this and have the real number ready for yourself, okay? But a knee-jerk guess, to get one appointment from the 800 list, how many calls do you need to make? Okay, you made 122 calls and you got 2 appointments, and those are with decision makers. So from there, we need to break that down in a lot of different places. Okay, this is great. That is really good. So the couple of questions and then let me just contrast that. When you do your own lead generation, how many calls does it take to get to a decision maker? Right now, what we're looking at is that you have about 9% of your calls end up with a decision maker, and you have a 12% appointment setting ratio from there, or you have a 1.7% appointment to call ratio. So what that means is the average call, when you include voicemail and getting bumped around, is probably about 45 seconds, because some of them are about 15 seconds long. And then when you actually engage the 18 people, those are not very long, but you average that out. The point would be that for you to make 122 phone calls probably took you, not including bathroom break, putting the phone down, lifting it up, it probably took you about 2 hours. Okay, but so here's two things that I want to say about that. Pay close attention, because it might be 4 hours. I mean, I don't care if it's 6 hours. The point is, it's an actual number, and opinions don't matter. That number is the number that matters. But I would look at just the actual raw calling, not the in-between stuff. Like, if you ever watch The Pursuit of Happiness, Will Smith's character in there, like, he figured out how to make phone calls at such an incredibly fast pace that he was making them way faster than everybody else. He literally took no bathroom breaks. He taped his hand to the phone. I mean, it was amazing. Okay, so if you look at that raw calling number, now you know what that is. Okay, now the appointments themselves, you go on the appointment, right? Okay, so now there's two sets of data. When you do a Zoom appointment and you do a real appointment, the real appointment is going to have a higher closing percentage than a Zoom appointment. So here's what's naturally going to happen. The Zoom appointments aren't going to show up as often as in-person appointments. So if you have 10 scheduled appointments and they're in-person appointments, you'll probably complete 9 of them because people will be there. If you have 10 Zoom appointments scheduled, you'll probably complete 6. I'm just guessing right now because I know the SMB industry. All of these things, either or you, have to become better at. So you need to be able to get in touch. And so this is why I'm going to ask you separately on your own lead generation. What do these numbers look like? Okay, so what we're saying is that 50% of the result that you got, the 2 appointments you got, one was from your own lead generation. It only took 26 calls to get there. So now here's what I'm asking and why I'm asking it. How long did it take you to generate 26 leads to call? Because you can see where I'm going with this, right? Like, that is probably a climb worth the view. It probably does not take you as long as it does to call all of these numbers that yield no benefit. It probably takes you less time to actually do the lead generation, not to mention it's way more fun once you start making the phone calls. Now, the reason this is super important is because people make goals like this, they fail to calculate the time involved in doing it, and this is what overwhelms them. So they can't now put together what happens today, which now is what happens in a week, which is what happens in a month, which is what happens in a year. So I'll give you an example of this. Well, I worked with a guy who was supposed to be doing 5 appointments a day, who was supposed to have about a 50% closing percentage in the business that he was in. So that'd be 25 appointments in a week with about 12 and a half sales. And he said, I'm in a huge slump. I'm in a 3-week slump. I've only made 3 sales. And I said, oh, that's horrible. I said, and he's like, I need to work on my closing. And he starts throwing out all these different things he wants to work on. I said, stop. Let's just do a little bit of diagnostics here. I'm the doctor, you're the patient. I'm going to get some vital signs. 3-week slump? Okay, so in 3 weeks, you're supposed to be you should have done 75 appointments and you should have had 37 sales or so.